Hi, welcome to Lights Camera Author. I'm Jim Juno, and if you are a fan of silent movies like I am, you may have seen this lady. The actress's name is Laura LePlant, and she was probably most famous. Her famous movie was The Cat and the Canary. She was mainly a silent film actress, and I have with me tonight the author of a new book. The new book is called Laura LePlant, Silent Cinderella, and the author's name is Laura Jerrolds. Welcome to Light Camera Author, Laura.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, Laura LePlant, if I can get the accent right here. Um, you found out about her. You got interested in her almost by accident, didn't you?
I did, definitely. Yeah, so I was writing I wrote fiction first and I wrote about the 1920s in a book called Help, It's 1928. And I was just really curious about the decade. I really fell in love with the 1920s. And when I did a Google search, I found Laura LaPlante and I immediately felt connected to her because we do share a first name. And I just wanted to learn more about her.
And a lot of people nowadays may not even remember her because, let's face it, a silent movie star. And by the way, she was really big in the silent movies. But being that it was silent movies, a lot of her movies have gotten lost, haven't they?
They have, yeah. There is a good number. She's lucky. Some of the silent stars, they might have, no films left or one or two. She does have a good set that are still available. So she's lucky in that way.
Right. Her most famous film, correct me if I'm wrong, is The Cat and the Canary, made in I think 1927, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's what she's best known for. And there's been like four or five remakes since then. It's quite popular.
And that survived. People can actually see that today.
Yeah.
And now, but how did besides you and her having the same name, when you started researching her life, what struck you most about her?
Yeah, I mean, I was really struck by just she was just a really nice person. And she didn't, the fame didn't get to her head, and she didn't even want really to be an actress. She just, her family was struggling and they really needed someone to work and they lived close by. And it was like, oh, maybe you should get into the movies. But her whole mission in life was to provide for her family and get them out of poverty.
And she most certainly did that.
Yeah.
Like you said, the her parents they divorced back in the era when a divorce happened. That was almost like a red letter, wasn't it? It was like, oh my gosh, this is you know, it's a stigma attached to it.
For sure. And I'm so in awe of her mother, Lydia, because she fought so hard to get an education when her marriage wasn't working and she saw the kids not really like her two daughters not getting really a good life. She was like she left her husband, moved them across the country. I mean, especially back in the early 1910s, I'm like, what an empowering woman she was. So,
Right, and a lot of those road if they were not taking horse-drawn carriages, which were still around then, the roads themselves were not they were not
yeah,
the interstates that we know today.
yes, for sure. Yeah, different
And,
time.
and she ended up in San Diego.
She did.
And how was the relationship with her mother? Was it a good relationship?
Oh yeah, I mean they were like best friends. Her mother and her sister Violet, they were so close. I mean, Laura just provided so much for them, even buying them a house. And yeah, they were all like best friends, so great relationship.
Tell me how she got started in movies.
Yeah. So she had a cousin, Mary, she's the reason they even went to California because she came back with stories of, oh, this magical place. So they all moved out there. And Mary lived next door to a scenario writer and they could kind of get her in the door. So she started with the Christie's company with Al Christie and Charles Christie and like little short comedies.
Right? And how did she get, quote, discovered, unquote?
Yeah. I mean, I would say when her fame kind of more took off was when Universal found her. Because she did a couple like low budget westerns with Fox, and then Universal took notice. From there she moved over with them, and then they started featuring her, and then she became like a star, they called.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, she, like we said earlier, she was known mainly for silent movies, but when talkies came in, her career didn't stop. I mean, she transitioned to the sound films, didn't she?
She did. She had no trouble with that. Some of the stars, their voices didn't translate well. Hers translated wonderful. And yeah, she made several talkies, had a great career with the talkies, and she didn't even worry about, like, she wasn't nervous about the transition. She was just like, okay, I guess we're talking now.
But why did she leave the United States to go to Europe?
Yeah, this is so cool. Like, she just really wanted to go to London. And her husband at the time, she was married to director Bill Sider. He didn't really want to go. So she's like, I'm just going to go by myself just for a vacation. While she was out there, she had a good friend, Irving Asher, who she later ended up marrying. But he was a producer of Warner Brothers out in London, and he really coaxed her back into the movies. And then she made, I think it was like about five or so films out there with him, and then they got married.
And for those of you out there who aren't familiar with the Warner Brothers over in Europe, this was kind of like the Poverty Row
Yes.
studio. They weren't epics. They weren't multi-million dollar films, were they?
No, they weren't. And her last one over there was called Man of the Moment with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. It actually never got released in the United States. So even though it had two big names from the United States, it never even was over here, which is crazy.
What made her retire? Why did she retire? Because she was still, I mean, okay,
Yeah.
so she wasn't the big silent movie star that she was, but she was still making a living.
She was. I mean, she really wanted children. And I really think that's why she ended up retiring because she didn't want to do both. She wanted to really focus her life on being a mother. And her husband, Irving Asher, I mean, he stayed in the business up until his retirement.
Yeah.
So I think she felt comfortable stepping away, knowing like he still has, the job with the movies, but I can just really focus on her children.
And she was on You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx, wasn't she?
She was.
Tell tell me you have that story in your book.
Yeah.
Tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so this was right around the time that Irving Asher made Elephant Walk with Elizabeth Taylor, and Laura thought it might help his movie if I come back in the spotlight and do a couple little TV show appearances. So the first one was You Bet Your Life, which was like a little game show, and she did promote the film. He did a little interview before, and she plugs in Elephant Walk. It's really sweet.
Yeah, and she actually won
She did.
for what was considered in those days big money. I think like
Yes.
about 200 or $215, something like that.
Yeah, you're right.
And, and she donated it though to the Motion Picture Country Home.
She did. Yeah, that was nice.
Yes, I mean, so she always had that generous spirit with first with her mother and her sister, and then with fellow actors later on down the road, correct?
Correct. Yeah, she was always generous. She always thought of others before herself.
You know, I meant to look at this on YouTube before, and I didn't get a chance to, but there was a show, I forget, it was in the 80s, I know that. It was her last appearance. It was the Night of the Hundred Stars.
Yes, Night of 100 Stars. Yeah,
And appropriately, she didn't say anything because she was a silent movie actress. But it was nice to see I mean, it was nice to see that Hollywood had not forgotten her.
absolutely. Yeah, it was very sweet that they honored her. And at the time, she had just either, I think, broken her ankle and they had to wheel her out in a wheelchair, but
Mhm.
she hated that because she didn't want people to think like the only reason she couldn't walk was because of the ankle. It wasn't because, oh, she was older. Like, so she
Or
didn't
she wasn't infirmed or anything like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been that would that's because see that you don't know that until you read your book that she has suffered a broken ankle. I'll be honest with you. In looking at the video, I was thinking, well, she's old and can't and not mobile, but that
Yeah.
wasn't the case at all.
I thought that at first too, because I saw the video way before I really dove into the research. And then when I was doing like newspaper articles, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense now.
Did you find anybody or did you talk to anybody who knew her?
A couple people, yes. In the book, so she started sculpting later in life. She got in really into that. And it was with Albert Wine. His stepdaughter used to go over to Laura LePlant's house, and I got to interview her, which was really cool to hear about the food that they cooked over there and just kind of what it was like. I talked to Laura's daughter had a boyfriend. And then a journalist who knew Laura. As far as like immediate family though, I did not get to talk to her son or her grandson. I tried, but
Hmm.
it's difficult to reach people sometimes.
Has anybody contacted you since the book came out?
Yes, oh my gosh. I mean, not immediate family, but William Drew, the historian, his book, Speaking of Silence, really like was such a big source for me. Just yesterday, I got an email from him and I was like, I'm such a fan of his, so it was really cool.
And also, what's cool is that Kevin Brownlow, I believe, wrote the foreword. Kevin Brownlow, for those of you out there, this guy is like the dean of silent movies. He wrote the book called The Parade Has Gone By, and he did the Hollywood documentary that you can catch on YouTube. What was that? What was that like when you finally found out? Okay, I'm gonna write the forward. He's gonna write the forward to your book.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for Kevin Brownlow, not even just for this book, but for all he's done for silent films. It's just, he's really helped to keep them alive. Yeah, I mean, I was so honored that he would want to be a part of the book, and he's just been such a nice friend. Like, and he'll mail you stuff. Like, if you're like, he's mailed me like packets that he's kept on Laura LaPlante. And it's just like he's just incredible. He really cares to pass down his knowledge to others. And
Oh
it's
wow, that's great. I mean, it's like
yeah, he's
and it's great to see silent films getting their due recognition because I'll be honest with you, the only time I ever saw silent films when I was growing up, back in the dark ages, was if they happened to be shown at a local cinema, at a local film house, like an art film house or something like that. Now you've got them more on like on Turner Classic Movies and YouTube, and so it really how I guess I'm asking what's it like for you to see silent films come into their own again?
I love to see it because I think a lot of people, when they think of a silent film, they think it's going to be like 10 minutes long, kind of like the Keystone Cops kind of.
Yes.
A lot of my family has been very surprised to be like, oh, they're as long as a regular movie. I'm like, yeah, like they have, really good storylines. The only difference is people aren't talking, but they still tug at your heartstrings. It's really wonderful to get to see kind of a renaissance with silent films again.
You're going to be making an appearance, a book signing appearance on October 5th, I believe, correct?
Correct. Yes, that'll be out in like by San Francisco at the Niles Silent Film Museum. We're gonna do a little showing of The Cat and the Canary, and then afterwards I'll be signing copies. I'm so excited.
Well, everybody, if you're out in the San Francisco area and there's no earthquakes, you know,
Yes.
check it, the Niles Silent Movie Museum, correct?
Yes.
And
Correct.
October 5th is the date. The
Yes.
book is, well, I gotta ask you about the title. I meant to ask you about the title, Silent Cinderella. Where did that come from?
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited about the title. Um, so Laura was called a Cinderella because of her upbringing. She was raised, she didn't have any money. She kind of had that rags to riches story. So in various magazines, I would see they would call her a Cinderella. The silent part, she was a silent star, yes, but also later in her years, I mean, she didn't like boast about her career. She kind of remained private. So I thought, well, she kind of is like a silent Cinderella overall.
Well, fantastic. Well, the author is Laura Jerrolds, and the book is Laura LePlant, Silent Cinderella. Laura, I want to thank you so much for being on Light Camera Author tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.